You closed out?
So, welcome everyone. We're so glad that you're here. And this space was created with one simple hope, and it's to slow down, to breathe deeply, and to explore something meaningful together. Um, whether you've come with faith, questions, doubts, or just curiosity, you are welcome here. And we will be reading from the Bible. We'll be reading Psalm 46:10, and we'll actually read the entire chapter, not to preach or to pressure, but it is simply to reflect and to listen and to see what wisdom may arise. When we read it in community, I've always found that it's something really powerful. And for me, scripture has been a source of strength. It's been a source of healing. It's been a source of perspective. And I believe that it becomes even more powerful when we read it all together and we hear from other people's, we learn from their stories, we learn from their experiences. Um, so we look forward to any insights that come to the table, whether it's from here through this journaling session or anyone else who is participating. So, wherever you are in your journey, we just want to say thank you for showing up. Okay, so today we're going to focus on being still. And this is always, I think, a challenge for many people. Um, but before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge, and I am going to hand it over to Alyssa, who usually guides us through the acknowledging.
Hello, everyone. So, this is a three-part series that we do every month. And so, a way we begin is by checking in and acknowledging with ourselves and with each other. So, again, if you want to join these live, you can. Well, we'll share how at the end. But in this moment, check in with yourself and notice what's going on internally. And along with that, notice what word comes to mind when you think about God. Just taking a moment. When you think about God, what arises? Notice any physical sensations, any emotions, thoughts. And you can even jot them down. Jot down bullet points of what stands out to you and what comes to mind. Okay, now we're going to go into the verse.
So, we're going to read Psalm 46:10. I keep saying 46:10, and it's actually 46, the chapter 46, but the verse that we took out is verse 10. And why stillness? Stillness invites revelation, and I think the call to being still, it really does make space to allow ourselves to have an intimate encounter with God. And this verse that I will read to you is a verse this chapter is a chapter of call and response. And I'll share that before I read it, just so you know a little bit of the context, that the context isn't during a peaceful time by any stretch. It's actually quite the opposite. There's a lot of turmoil, there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of chaos within the nation. There's, just everything. Even in the chapter itself, it talks about earthquakes and troubled waters and mountains crumbling, and in the midst of all of this, the psalmist invites us to be still. It's almost like the verse, the chapter, I keep saying verse, I apologize. The chapter is from the psalmist's perspective. But then when it talks about being still, it changes the perspective, and now it's a different voice here. It is the voice of God saying, "Be still and know who I am." So I'll begin reading. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, even though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though its waters roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with its swelling. There is a river whose streams shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacle of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God shall help her just at the break of dawn. The nations raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice, the earth melted. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Come behold the works of the Lord, who has made desolations in the earth. He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and cuts the spear in two. He burns the chariot in the fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. So as you see in verse 10, there's a change of person. And Jehovah himself here is introduced. And he's commanding the world to cease to its own power, and to acknowledge his sovereignty here over all the kingdoms. And it's something that we can relate to in today's society. How challenging is it for us to be still? And when we stop and we create space, that's where God's power can be known. And it really does express our dependence on God. When we are still, it shows our expression of what we need, and that is Him. We just need Him, and we don't need anything else. And when we're in that posture, when we're in that disposition of stillness, when we say, "Lord, I'm here, I want to hear from you," or "Lord, I'm here, I just need you," or "Lord, I'm here, I'm a little bit confused, but I know that your ways are higher than my ways, that your thoughts are higher than my thoughts." In that posture, then He can reveal Himself to us. He can reveal something to us. He can, even if it's just not necessarily the answer that we're looking for, but peace is within that stillness. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alyssa, who will now lead us into a scripture meditation.
Okay, so we're going to meditate on this. We're going to allow ourselves to be available and willing to listen and to be still. That's at this time all that we need to do. Isn't it so interesting how all it's being asked of us at this moment is to be still and we'll know. And it's interesting how we're gifted understanding and epiphany and revelation in this way. Oh, I thought you were going to say something, Angie, because you came off camera. Are you gonna? No. Okay. Okay, so these are the words. So go ahead and get yourself comfortable as we dive into our meditation, and then we'll transition into our prompts for journaling. So find your comfortable position. And we'll be meditating on these words. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. From Exodus 14:14. And again, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, even though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though its waters roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with its swelling. So as you find your comfortable spot, go ahead and close your eyes if you feel safe and comfortable to do so. Taking a few deep breaths in and fully exhaling. Allow your exhale to be slightly longer each time and longer than your inhale. So you're really letting go of all of the breath after inhaling, really releasing in that exhale. Noticing any tension in your body, just beginning to notice your physical state, notice your jaw, your shoulders. Allowing your shoulders to drop, allowing your belly to soften, your eyebrows, continuing with the breath. Notice if there's anything troubling you. And still continuing with your breath. Again, allowing yourself to be available and willing to listen, willing to hear, willing to be still, even when there is and when there can be troubling feelings, circumstances. Even if you feel foundations shaking, we're taking this moment to reach for strength, to take refuge. To take refuge in what gives strength, through which strength comes from. We're invited and allowed and welcomed to seek strength. Even though the earth be removed. And the swelling, the shaking, the troubleness can show up as anger or grief, sadness, depression, fear. And there are things around us that may come crumbling down. And yet, at the midst, God remains unmoved, unchanged. So even though there may be chaos around, noticing this moment, noticing this moment and how we're not the ones moving the mountains or carrying the mountains anywhere, but we are welcomed and invited to rest in the one that does move these mountains. Again, allowing your exhale to fully release every drop of breath. even if there's confusion and there's so many things that we don't know. And even as thoughts pop up, returning to the breath. Noticing any discomfort that comes with being still, if you feel any. Just noticing that as well. Noticing the stillness and silence, even if thoughts are popping up, returning to this silence, the stillness, and being aware of that. Continuing to allow your breath to be slow and easy, full. We turn towards so many things for knowledge. We seek knowledge in so many different areas and through so many different ways. And sometimes we don't even think to be still, to know. And not just to know anything, but to know our Creator. Few more moments here. We are already known. And sometimes what the human heart craves, what we crave, is that intimacy of being fully known. In and out. And in stillness, we have a chance to know the Creator of all. There's a window in being still. There's a softness in being still that would allow our minds, our eyes to begin to see, and our ears to hear, our hearts to understand. What can be so mysterious and vast. There's a surrendering and being still. Surrendering the mind, the attention and the focus that usually goes to so many other areas. We're going to slowly begin to transition into our journaling. Taking your time, and moving and opening your journal. And the journaling is like a continuation of the meditation. Okay, and you can choose any of these prompts once you are ready. The first is, what have I found difficult about being still? Do I find it hard to give up control? Do I try to figure things out on my own, even those things that are out of my control? You can list 3 things you need and want to let go of, release, or give to God. And what do you feel God is calling you to release at this time? So you can choose any of these prompts. And we'll let you know once 1 minute is left.
Can I share a thought while we're writing?
Yeah, go for it.
Uh, so I'm just thinking about this whole session and these prompts and this idea of stillness, and in this world where we're constantly being pushed to stay busy and to hustle and to achieve something, to be something to someone or be somewhere. And being still can even can feel counterintuitive, and I think sometimes it could even feel uncomfortable for some people. And but I think the stillness is really just about creating space to reflect, to listen, to breathe. And it's also a way to just step out of the noise, and then reconnect with something that's deeper than ourselves. I think when we're in the constant hustle, it's really easy to think that we are the ones that are doing everything, or we are the ones that are in control of everything. But in actuality, we're not. If we were in control of if we were in control of everything, most of us would probably be living differently, right? Like most of us would probably try to control certain things that happen in our lives, that happen, and we're like, oh, I wish that wouldn't have happened, or I wish that would happen, but yet we have no control of it. And I think that um even if someone, let's say, doesn't believe in God, or in that there is a creator, the practice of stillness can still open the door to peace, to clarity, to healing. Um, and it's in those quiet moments that we actually do gain insight if we're open to it. If we are in a disposition of openness, then we gain insight about our life, or maybe ourselves, or even maybe something greater than ourselves. Maybe we things are revealed to us that maybe weren't revealed before because we weren't in that disposition. So I do believe that stillness allows us to make room for that curiosity, for the wonder, the deeper questions, the mysteries of of this creator that we have. And in those deeper questions, when we are in that, like I said, that when in that certain posture of wanting to receive, of wanting to know, because there's nothing wrong with being curious, of wanting to receive and wanting to know, then be prepared to have revelations. So I just wanted to share that. Thanks. So I think my point is, whether someone is a believer or not a believer, being still is still a gift for for all of us, and it's a way to step out of these these modes that we're in, of like just surviving, into and just taking us out of that and putting us into a more um meaningful and sacred, and more sacred space. Thank you.
Angie, I have to. Did I take myself off mute? Can you hear me? Okay. Um, Thank you for all of that. And this is being recorded, right? That was beautifully put, and you touched on so many of the thoughts that I was having during the meditation. And even as I started writing. And you're so absolutely right. I think it's something that I think it's a question that has come up in different settings and in different scenarios. If even looking at, I think it was Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own, where she talks about women at that time in history not really having the opportunity to have a quiet space to sit and write, because that was her kind of holy grail. That was her means of survival. And so it's that's just an example, but you're absolutely right about stopping, or not right or wrong. I completely connected with everything that you were saying, even down to stopping, being still, and having that sacred space in yourself, creating that to question, to have profound thoughts, to connect with, to just that. I'm so glad that you said everything that you said, and that you put it into words. What I was thinking, I had only gotten 2 sentences down, and I was like, how I'm having all of these thoughts, universe, and then like the day to day, like, and you just beautifully put into words what I could not even begin to start to kind of tease out, because it just almost was overwhelming, just how many thoughts I had between the meditation and then the questions that were posed. So thank you for sharing that. I really, really appreciate every word that you just said. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, we'll continue the conversation in just a few minutes. I just want to give a couple more minutes. We're gonna start wrapping up the journaling prompts here. So we have 1 minute left. Okay, wrapping up your thoughts. Okay, so we can wrap it here on, so we are live on YouTube, Dallas, and we can continue to have a conversation off live, but if you don't mind, we'll continue the conversation live. Are you okay with that? I just want to make sure.
Oh, yes, absolutely. The only reason I asked was because I'm hoping that I can go back and listen to what Angie said again at some point in the future because it was so perfect. That's why I mentioned it, because I thought I'd like to hear Angie's comments that she just said again if I could find it. So yes, I am absolutely fine with being live on YouTube.
Okay, awesome. All right, so continue this conversation on control, on being still, and Angie, yeah, you highlighted being still and how it's pretty much impossible to be still when we are in survival mode. Like it's being still allows us to drop out of that hustle and the busyness of life and all of the worries that we can have and be consumed by. And in being still, we do have the opportunity of knowing, and I feel that we touched on this also last week and weeks prior in our previous journaling sessions, but how we have greater access and more availability when we are still. Yet it is difficult to reach that stillness. It is challenging. It can be challenging to be still in many different circumstances. And then with control, that was an interesting one for me because when I think of control, especially today specifically, I think of control and I wondered about intention. I wondered about structure. I wondered about self-control. Um, and so it's interesting, and I really want like the like specific words to just dig into this, but there are things that we don't control. There are things that we don't control when the sun comes up or, you know, any of what's happening around us. There's a lot of things that we don't control. So that's and then the conversation around control and surrendering is really fascinating to me because there is very little we have control over. And we have responsibility over our behavior, our actions, how we show up, and how we nurture the seeds in our heart, whether we listen to our hearts or not, you know, or like these choices that we come across, these decisions that we come across. So I find control really, really interesting. Um, but I'm wondering what's standing out to you too, as well.
I have noticed in the past that when I am facing life-changing circumstances, um, or when I'm seeking life-changing circumstances, the times that things have worked out for the best possible, like better than I could have imagined, have been the times where I finally stopped trying to control the circumstances and stopped trying to control the outcome or what it was that I was going after, and instead waited for it to come to me, whether it was an opportunity, whether it was, relocation, like whatever it happens to be. And those are things that those are the day-to-day things that I think a lot of times we feel like we should have control over. But with that control comes judgment. And I think that the thing that has impeded me in the past, the times that I have tried to wrestle control over, getting a particular job or moving to a particular place, is, I don't know everything. I'm not omniscient. So I don't know all of the parts that are in play. And I should not even expect myself to know that, or to think that I would know enough to know what the best thing is. So I think that for me, that concept of control, I think letting go of control, and also I think it goes hand in hand with recognizing that I'm only one player in 8 billion players on this earth, and so someone on the other side of the world could do something that has an impact that I could not really control that chain of reactions. Like you said, all I can control is how I show up, how I respond, how I react. And so I think those two things go hand in hand. Not tricking my not believing, or not tricking myself into thinking that I can control things, or that I even should be in control of things, or that I have enough information, knowledge to control things. And also that acceptance, because then it's less of a falling on my face if I'm not thinking that these are things that I can control. I mean, you look at things like catastrophes that happen, or really terrible accidents, or even terrible things that people may do to one another. Those are things that are out of one's control. And so I think that coping with, large impact events on a person's life, I think coping with that requires a lot of meditation on how much control we have in our lives, and what we can control, and what it makes sense to let the powers that be, the great web, kind of push us into what will be the optimal outcome, instead of fighting it and trying to go in a different direction. That's what I think. I'm realizing I'm talking.
I
No,
love
you're
when you
talking
talk,
to
Dallas.
somebody. Oh, is that at the same time? Yeah, no, you're not talking too much, if that's what you were going to say. But
You always have some good insight.
mm. Mm.
Yeah, and for me, I guess the word surrender and control, same. It's a really interesting um, contrast that kind of goes hand in hand. Um, and I think it's a daily exercise. It's a daily thing happening that you have to intentionally do. For me, it's like the most important thing. I value very much my time alone. Like, it's one of the most important things um that I need. I need that space by myself, without anyone, without any friends, without any children, without any, like, I need that And it's that time that I can sit out and see what's going to be revealed to me, or just sit in like desire of wanting to hear or wanting to be enlightened. And I think at the end of the day, the fact that we're not in control is a gift. I think at the end of the day, I think the fact that we're not, we are not the end all be all is a gift. When we surrender, that's something that is like, is we are gifting ourselves, because in surrender, there's so much that's revealed. There's so much enlightenment and clarity. Not necessarily everything's perfect, but just you get a sense of clarity. And so for me, that's kind of what how I see the two, living with one another. The surrendering and the letting go of control. You just got to let go of the pressure that we all carry to perform or to prove. We're either performing something or we're trying to prove something. And it's like that, it's constant pressure that we have on ourselves.
And also in surrendering, there can often be a choice in surrendering. So there can be still an action in surrendering, that's either the way that we show up, or that we behave, or certain actions that we take because of our surrendering. When you were speaking, Dallas, I thought about the choice between the patterns that we constantly go to, or the reoccurring patterns and our habits that we continue, or the choice to do something new, to change or shift a habit, and how that choice is there's that choice that we come across, that we can shift and do things differently. And surrender is within that. It's when we are still and we're allowed for our minds to be shifted, and as we grow, that we don't have the control over our own paths, because we don't know the future and we're not in the future, but because we're growing and becoming, then in that stillness, we again have that access or availability to surrender to it, so that we can keep growing in that path, so that we can then, in that surrendering, choose something different that we weren't previously, because we would continue with our patterns, because we're also we turn to patterns. Our human minds it works in patterns. So we just keep walking in the same familiar pattern, and we shift it slightly. And yeah, so being still is that window again. It's that window for our minds to be renewed, for us to recognize what we don't know, what we don't have control of, and then to receive that revelation. Because sometimes in not being still, there's that frantic feeling of wanting to figure it out, of wanting to survive. So can we read the first part again, and then if we have any other thoughts, and then we can close if there aren't any outstanding thoughts. Okay, so yeah, this first half. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, even though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though its waters roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with its swelling. There is a river whose streams shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacle of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God shall help her just at the break of dawn. Hmm. So, yes, so to wrap up, also, whoever is watching and listening, taking a few moments to jot down what it felt like to be still, to be in the silence. How often do you do it? When do you do it? Um, and how, just very quickly, just bullet points, how did it feel for you to be still? Alrighty. We get so used to filling the moments, the present moment, with so many things, our opinions, our thoughts, our activities. So, any other outstanding thoughts, Angie, Dallas, before we wrap up?
Once again, I just, as I am every single week, I am amazed at how much peace it brings me to participate, to have that meditation time and to have that quiet stillness. Um, right now I have lots and lots of time to myself. And theoretically, I'm walking around being this amazing philosopher as I go through my garden and think of there really is something different about sitting with you on these nights. This is always a different experience for me. It's always more profound. It gives me the opportunity with your promptings and the words that you're saying in the background of the meditation. It gently draws me back to, what my goal is at that point in time, being still, just reminding me to be. And I actually felt very, very centered and more still tonight in that short time that I was here for the meditation than I have all week long. And I mean, there really is, in my experience, something to setting aside that specific time for yourself to do this actual exercise. It's so I mean, I thought I was practicing it through, earlier throughout the week with other methods, but there's something to that guided meditation that you give, and that, kind of talking us through and kind of settling on certain touch points throughout, that I always end up feeling much more profound and much more oxygenated than I do just kind of winging it on my own. So that's something that I really want to thank you for continually hosting and giving support to that healthy aspect of my own week.
Mm. I'm so glad that you feel the sense of peace, and I definitely feel that meditating in community and coming together in this way in community has been, throughout the times that we've done it, has been so inspiring, and it is very powerful to also come together in this meaningful way and to meditate together. So I appreciate you being here and joining us. Did you have any outstanding thoughts, Ange?
Nothing for me. I'm just gonna stay right in this space. So, um, yeah, I look forward to the knowing aspect and what's gonna be brought out there.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so the next session and no, which is also reflect, will be Sunday, this coming Sunday at 7 p.m. And if you're watching and if you'd like to join, the link, we'll put it in the description, and you can sign up via Eventbrite to join the conversation. And if you'd like to keep participating in these monthly journaling sessions, you can via the link on our Eventbrite. So thank you for joining, and I hope this continues with you throughout the evening as well as throughout the week. So just taking moments to check in throughout the week, to be still and without expectation, but being still and just available, being still and being available in the silence. And then let us know how that feels, what comes up. And this is a space to dig into it. This is the space to sit with it and to be with what is revealed from it. So thank you all for joining, and I hope to see you next week.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.